No doubt, Coca-Cola stands out as the largest beverage company globally, and arguably one of the most controversial drinks worldwide. But while it's often linked to love, family, and togetherness, there's a hidden side behind its attractive bottle and label, a truckload of dark secrets and unsettling truths that might make you reconsider everything you thought you knew about your beloved fizzy drink, and we'll be spilling it all in this video. So, if you really want to learn about the dark side of Coca-Cola's history, sit tight because we're serving you the undiluted truth about how a drink made with just sugar, cola nuts, coca leaves, and carbonated water took over the world in a not-so-bubbly way. Some would say that Coca-Cola was invented by a drug addict attempting to formulate a syrup for overcoming addiction, but the story goes beyond that. It all started in the 1800s when Dr. John Pemberton, a prominent pharmacist in Atlanta, Georgia, and a Civil War veteran, faced a near-death experience when he was caught in the direct line of fire in 1885. The doctors believed there was no way he could survive the damage and administered heavy doses of morphine to help ease his pain before he took his final breath. Strangely, Pemberton survived, but at a cost. He became hooked on morphine and couldn't stop, so he began sourcing herbal remedies for his addiction. At the same time, he heard about a drink called Vin Mariani, which was believed to cure any sort of ailment. Pemberton took it and loved how he felt afterwards, except that this drink didn't really help with any ailments but made anyone who drank it feel good because it contained cocaine and red wine. Being a chemist, this idea inspired Pemberton to create his own version that could assist him in overcoming his morphine addiction and also function as a herbal remedy for common health issues. So, using red wine, cola nuts which contain caffeine, and coca leaves containing cocaine, he created what he named Pemberton's French Wine Cola in 1886. That same year, his creation entered the market, but it turned out to be bad timing because prohibition swept across most US states, forbidding the use of alcohol. This meant Pemberton had to redo his formula, but maybe it was perfect timing because, this was how part of the iconic Coca-Cola was born. After removing red wine from his formula, he replaced it with tons of sugar to preserve its sweet taste, and then it was ready to re-enter the market. But Pemberton just needed to give it a new name, so his accountant Frank Robinson suggested, why don't we all just call it by the ingredients it's made from? Coca and Cola, except we'll replace the K in Cola with a C to make it sound even cooler. With that, Pemberton introduced it to pharmacies where they mixed the syrup with plain water and affixed a 5% price tag to it. Now, legend has it that a pharmacy worker accidentally mixed the syrup with carbonated water and served it over ice to a customer. As you might have guessed, it was an instant hit, and with that, Coca-Cola kicked off. But unlike the $247 billion company it's known as today, the first year of its production was quite slow, with only an average of 9 drinks sold daily. Despite claiming that his drink had healing properties, Pemberton continued to get ill, and his addiction worsened. Eventually, on August 16, 1888, he was declared dead. Before his death, Pemberton sold the company for only $2,300 to Asa Candler, a well-known businessman in Atlanta and a marketing genius who came up with countless creative ideas to promote Coca-Cola. In fact, there was a theory that Candler burned up all of the previous records of Coca-Cola as a means to cover his tracks. It was believed that he didn't actually buy back all of the shares already owned by other people, but forged some signatures to become the sole owner of the company, which he eventually did in 1990. Despite this, the drink wasn't an immediate success, so Candler took matters into his own hands to make Coca-Cola popular. He went all out by putting up Coke banners, billboards, and placards, even painting the logo on barns. Basically, he plastered the Coca-Cola brand on anything he could find, positioning it as a tasty, relaxing beverage for everyone to enjoy. Due to this, Coca-Cola's mass marketing strategy became a massive success, and under Candler's leadership, sales surged from around 9,000 gallons of syrup in 1890 to approximately 370,877 gallons in 1990. He elevated it further by paying movie stars and athletes to endorse the drink, and that's how Coca-Cola became a household name. However, there was a growing pressure to remove the cocaine from the drink, so In 1903, they began to heavily process the coca leaves and filter off the cocaine, but it wasn't until 1929 that all traces of cocaine were finally removed from Coca-Cola. During this time, Coke was only sold as a fountain drink, and Candler didn't see a problem with it since it kept shipping and distribution costs low. On the other hand, two lawyers, Ben Thomas and Joseph Whitehead, saw the potential in bottling the drink, so Candler agreed to this and sold them the bottling rights for just $1. Apparently, Candler didn't see the worth of bottling his products, if only he knew what he'd be missing. Once the Second World War broke out in 1939, strangely, Coca-Cola saw this as a perfect opportunity to increase the sales of its product and expand into other countries. How, did you ask? Well, they achieved this in three ways. One, by lobbying the US government. Initially, sugar was rationed to support the needs of soldiers, which meant companies needed to cut back on their sugar. But Coca-Cola had this dark idea to use the war to their advantage. They argued that Coke should be exempted from sugar rationing because it was essential for wartime and could provide soldiers with energy and help boost their morale. And guess what? The government actually bought into it, thanks to the hefty sums Coca-Cola spent on lobbying. And this was under the administration of President Franklin Roosevelt. Eventually, a Coca-Cola executive was also appointed to the rationing board and gave the company an exemption from sugar rationing. Still, they didn't stop there, but even publicly announced that for every soldier, they would sell a bottle of Coke for only 5 cents. Now, this meant the company would incur losses on each drink sold, but the risky move paid off big time, earning Coca-Cola customers for life and turning them into a wartime hero in the eyes of millions of Americans and soldiers alike. Number 2. By exploiting the government for funds. Coca-Cola had seen all the possibilities of expansion and how big they could really go. So, they seized the opportunity even more and ran with it. They even started running ads with soldiers proudly holding Coke bottles. But here's the interesting part. Behind closed doors, Coca-Cola made a deal with the government to get funding for setting up Coca-Cola bottling plants overseas. They pitched it as a way to boost American influence and soldier morale. But in reality, it meant taxpayers were unknowingly funding Coke's global expansion project. Shockingly, the government agreed to this again, and they set up a whopping 64 Coke bottling plants worldwide. And guess who footed a big part of the bill? Yeah, you guessed it, the US government. Or, let's say us, since the government spends taxpayers' money. As a result, Coke continued to spread like wildfire throughout countries in Southeast Asia and Europe. While most countries were still struggling to stay afloat during this time, Coca-Cola was more successful than they'd ever been. And 3. By supporting the Nazis. In the eyes of Americans and the world, Coca-Cola was a model patriot helping soldiers cope through the war and providing them with a sense of home. Only that in reality they were just as sneaky as the fox and only cared about their profit. While Coca-Cola thrived as the national symbol of America during the war, they were also secretly supplying Nazi Germany with Coke as well. I mean, they didn't care if America or Germany were at loggerheads as long as it was a great market for their product. Talk about betrayal at its best. They even went as far as featuring their logo alongside swastikas, which is a German emblem of the Aryan race. Coca-Cola also made their way into Hitler Youth rallies and got advertised on Nazi education materials. But as the war went on, some restrictions were put against Germany by the US, meaning most suppliers couldn't go into the country anymore, and Coca-Cola faced the same fate as it couldn't import its syrup into Germany. However, if there's one thing you should know about the company by now, it's that they would always find a way out, and they did. Max Keith, the head of Coke's major bottling operation in Germany, had a genius move up his sleeves. He worked with local chemists to create a new drink from fruit scraps similar to Coke, but without the imported syrup, which they proudly called Fanta in 1940. And guess what? Fanta became a smash hit in Nazi Germany, filling the beverage gap left by wartime bans. It was even believed that Keith went as far as roping in forced labor from concentration camps to hasten the production of the drink. At the end of the war in 1945, all the profits from the sales of Fanta went back to Coca-Cola headquarters. Germany continued selling Fanta, and by 1955, it was available in many countries worldwide. But just as Coca-Cola denied including cocaine in their original recipe, they also denied their support for the Nazis and their production of the new drink, which is where more of the dark and dirty sides of Coca-Cola begin to unfold. Now, if you've enjoyed this video so far, kindly give it a thumbs up, share it with others, and subscribe to Foodipedia to stay tuned for part 2. where we'll continue the eye-opening exploration of Coca-Cola's dark history. In the meantime, check out this video about how fizzy drinks affect your brain while you're still here. See you there.